Hey everybody, this is Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and I just want to take a moment to wish everybody a happy New Year's. I hope y'all had a great New Year's Eve, got home safe, ready for 2023. I'm sure we're all excited about what books we're going to be getting this year, what are our goals, things like that. I know here at Collector Auctions that I'm looking forward to seeing what new books I pick up this year. Definitely what kind of grades I get from CGC this year. And I want to see how this channel can grow and maybe become a bigger part of the Baltimore, Washington community. We have some other YouTubers here in this area that have a much bigger channel, and I really enjoy following them. But there's also a bunch of other people here in this area that set up at the shows and are big parts of the community. And as we get into the year, we'll be talking about them more, and hopefully we'll be, like I said, growing this community a little bit more. I really like how the Northeast corridor has a concentrated number of YouTubers that are all part of this community, and I would love to see this Baltimore, Washington area develop a little bit more like that. So, personally, here at Collector's Auctions, one thing I've been considering doing is possibly changing the name of the channel. I don't always sell, but that name, where does that name come from? Collector's Auctions. It was simply an old eBay name that I've been had for years. I just kept that name and just branded across when I started the YouTube channel. And I'm going to reach out to you guys. Let me know, what do you think? I'm honestly thinking of taking a page out of Reggie Collects and thinking about just changing it to Rusty Collects. I don't know if that's just too much of a similarity or something, but it's something that I'm considering. I don't know. You let me know. Should I keep the name Collector's Auctions or should I switch it to Rusty Collects? I sort of like the idea of branding myself because that's kind of putting me out in front rather than this idea of selling. Auctions definitely implies that I'm trying to sell all the time, and that's not what I'm trying to do. There is a healthy balance between selling, keeping things for the hobby, for the PC, helping pay for the hobby. So I don't want to be known for one thing or the other. Especially, I don't want to be just as a seller. There's nothing wrong with selling, but I don't want to come across like this channel, that's what we're doing here. But personally, getting back to my personal projects, we will continue with the project that I've been working on for the last year, getting 9.6s at the very least for the John Byrne run of XMen. Now, I'm doing pretty good on it, and we will continue with that. I've got a lot of books that are already in the shop, ready to be cleaned and pressed, ready to be sent out to CGC. We'll get an order together probably late January and start sending some more books in the CGC because of that. Also, I'll be working on 9.8 runs of Kraven's Last Hunt, Dark Knight Returns, and Batman Year One. All three of those, I've got plenty of copies of some of those issues that have 9.8s. I'm still struggling on a couple issues in each run. So hopefully we'll finish that project up, and we'll be moving on to other more interesting, maybe bigger things. One of the big goals for this year is also going to be trying to work on acquiring some certain grails. The big grails from the 70s. I'm going to be looking at Hulk 181s. I'm going to be looking at Giant Size X-Men 1s, trying to get that one back in my collection. I sold that a couple years ago. It was necessary at the time, but I'd love to get that back in the collection. Trying to finally get in a Spider-Man 129. We're not going to work on all three of these at the same time. We will see which one presents itself first. I will try to work out a trade partially to begin with, so it's not so cash heavy. We'll see where it goes, but I'm definitely going to be looking for those just for the PC, something to keep in this collection, something to pass down to my daughter that will really be worth something. And guys, what better way to get the year started off right than with a good old comic book haul? Now, these are books that I have picked up over the last week in December of 2022 from several of my local comic book shops here in the Baltimore, Washington area, from eBay and from whatnot. So let's get started and hope you enjoy these books. All right, so first up are a couple of orders that came in from Whatnot. Now, these are both free giveaways. I had entered, especially in the first one, I had entered one of the giveaways when I had visited the channel, and I'm talking about Kyle's Comics It's one of the sellers that I like going back to. I've bought from him in the past, and even though I've slowed down some of my purchasing and whatnot, I still pop in every now and then to see what kind of books some of my favorite dealers are selling. And I happened to pop in when they were doing a giveaway, and I ended up winning this here, and it is True Believers from Marvel. It is the reprint of Spider-Man 300, the first appearance of Venom, and they've named this Venom versus Spider-Man. Now, this is interesting. This is a second print. I didn't recognize this to begin with. I thought the color was a little odd. Obviously, it doesn't look just like ASM 300. So I looked it up, and yeah, it's a second print. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't even know that they had done a second print on any of these True Believers reprints. So that was interesting. That was a free giveaway from Kyle's Comics. And then the other one was a friend of mine. Now, I don't know if this was definitely a giveaway on the channel or if this was a act of kindness, but I have a feeling it was the latter more than anything. It's from Jim from Bronzeville Comics. He sent me some comics and got some really good ones here, and I'm really excited about these. First one up is a classic George Perez, Marv Wolfman. It is the second New Teen Titans series. This was in the, I guess, it wasn't prestige format, but it was a better formatted paper. It wasn't the old newsprint paper. Better colors, really popped. The artwork was fantastic. And this was the second series that they started. This is the first issue. This is actually in really nice shape. Love the series. I think I've got this already signed. I think I've got this signed by both Perez and Wolfman back in the day. Second was a copy of Justice Society of America #6. I believe this is Atom Smasher, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. This is some of these beautiful covers from Alex Ross. Just absolutely gorgeous. Just a beautiful book there. I think this was this Dale Eaglesham? Yeah, it was Dale Eaglesham. I love his artwork, by the way. If you ever go back, read some of these books with his artwork. It's fantastic. I also recommend going back and reading Villains United, the little mini-series that I actually love. That it was one of my favorite DC books. I had dropped DC for a long time, except for several books. I always went back and bought anything with the Justice Society, and after Villains United, I kept with the Secret Six. That's what the book turned into after that. And I stayed with that series for probably much until they blew everything up in the New 52. I think that's right. I think they basically stopped everything at the New 52. So a lot of books. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy watching, I guess it's a lot of these B tier. I don't want to say B tier. That's kind of insulting. But it was interesting watching some of these B-level characters. I love Catman, what they did with him in that series. Just made him a much better, more developed character, more interesting and everything. And I really enjoyed that. But the same can be said about most of the characters you'll find in the Justice Society. And maybe it's different, maybe it's you just haven't seen it, and it's with characters that you're not as familiar with, maybe. I don't know. But I really enjoyed anything from the JSA from all these years. I guess you could do more with those because it wasn't the big three, so you could do different things, and it was interesting. So definitely one of my favorite books there. But the big one that Jim sent me was something I actually have never had this book. I've never even really looked for it at shows. It's funny, maybe I just not on my radar, but I never had this, but I have one now. He sent me a slabbed copy of ASM 16, ASM 16. This is the annual. This is the first appearance of Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel. I never had this. I've never read this. I guess I'm still not going to read this, but I have this at least. So, Jim, thank you so much. Kyle's Comics, thank you for the giveaway. But Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate this act of kindness. I really like these books. These are all right up my alley, so I appreciate that. All right, next on our list is something I picked up from eBay. And what's funny is I haven't been picking up a lot from eBay these days, but I started thinking back that maybe I could go back there and see if I can find some nice copies of some books that I've been looking at on Heritage Auctions and some of my LCSs. Like, let's give eBay a shot again. So one of the things I've been looking for and being more interested in is the old Dale Comics or old Gold Key of Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge, for example. And I just did a random search and I said, okay, let's just look for Donald Duck and put in very fine Dell. And let's see what comes up and buy it now, and let's see if we can find some reasonably priced things. And look at the condition. Mostly I was looking at condition to see what kind of prices people were asking. So I ended up finding a book. This is Donald Duck from 1960. This is issue number 73. And with shipping, I paid about $16.52. And I say the price, I haven't mentioned prices at all today because it's really kind of irrelevant on most of these things. But this right here, I think if I had found this at one of my local comic book shops, this would have been a $50 to $75 to $100 book. This really looks nice. There's wear, yes, but there's no real breaks in color and everything. This is a really sharp copy, and I want to think that I found a really good deal in this. I'm going to be interesting to get this into the shop. I'll have to be very delicate when I bring it in to clean and press. Most of this will probably be, I probably will not do the traditional quick press I do in these with the moisture that I add. I will probably put this into a moisture bath, well, a container, a moisture box, and let it soak in some moisture, and then I'll work on it a little bit and basically gave it an easy press. I'm not going to go hardcore like I do in a lot of bronze, copper, and modern books. I probably have to explain going hard on that, but I just have to be very delicate on something like this, something this age. It looks really nice. So I'm excited about getting this book in. I've also got an Uncle Scrooge coming in as well. I paid a little bit more money for it, but again, it looked really good. But that book isn't in yet, so I'll save that for the next haul. So when next time I do a big comic book haul, you'll see that book, I'm sure. But for right now, I'm excited about getting this Donald Duck into my collection. All right, so finally on the list, there are a couple of the LCSs that I have gone to in the area here. This one right here is one I've never been to before, but has been recommended to me. And after doing some research and looking them up online and looking at some of the photos from the shop, I was excited about going there. It had a lot of wall books that I'm always interested in, and I'm not much of a guy who goes through the long boxes and deep dives like that. I like going looking at the walls and see what I can find, and then maybe take a look at some of their higher priced books. But seeing what's on their walls is what attracts me to a shop. If I see nothing but toys and new comic books and trade paperbacks, I might enjoy going there and looking around, but if I don't find the old comic books that I can look at, puts a little damper on my spirits. But this right here was a brand new shop to me, but I think it's been around for a while. It's called To Be Continued Comic Shop, or TBC Comic Shop, down in Crofton, Maryland. And I went down there on the last day of the year, and what was interesting was I had been following them on Whatnot, and as I was driving down, I'm literally listening to them do a live Whatnot show. And when I walked in, I wasn't expecting this to be right in the middle of the shop. I wasn't sure what to expect, but right in the middle of their shop on the showroom floor, they're doing this live show. So it made it a little bit more difficult to walk around and look at all the wall books. So I would say I looked at about probably 3/4 of them, but where they were set up, I couldn't look at the bins right there, and I couldn't look at the short wall that they had set up right there. But interestingly enough, and I didn't say anything to them at the time because they were still going live when I walked out of there. I had been buying a couple of things from them earlier in the day. So I guess technically I could have just stopped and let them finish up, and I could have probably picked my books up. But it's not going to take much for them to ship them up here to Columbia, Maryland. But as I said, I walked around, I took a look. They had some nice key comics on the walls, but I pulled away from some of them just because there were some defects that I didn't think I could manage. There was definitely some color breaking ticks that I just obviously wasn't going to be able to fix. So I was looking just to see what they had in the limited, well, I wouldn't say time, but the limited space that I could look around in there. And so I did a quick resume of the store, and I looked around, and I ended up pulling one book off of there with the understanding that I'm going to go back down there and maybe hopefully spotlight that store in its own video at some point. But I'll show you what I picked up. It's one that I've had in my PC before, and I've had good luck with it. It's a nice key comic book from the mid '80s. This is Legends by John Byrne. And this right here is issue number 3. This is the very first appearance of the new Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad that we are familiar with from the James Gunn movies. This is where the first story where they actually are put together. Amanda Waller from Legends number 1 puts this team together to basically take on threats in place of the Justice League. And I think by the end of the series, we get the brand new Justice League back as well. But this was the first appearance of the new Suicide Squad. So that was the only thing I picked up from this shop. I will go back down there when I get a chance, and hopefully we'll pick up some other nice books. I know that the books that I picked up, that I will be picking up off of Whatnot from their show, I'll do that in another comic book haul, and we'll talk about the shop a little bit more at that time. So stay tuned for a future video on To Be Continued Comic Shop. All right, so the very last comic book shop that I went to during the last week of 2022 was one that I had just recently went to for the very first time up in Parkville, Maryland. They're called Collector's Corner, and I went back because when I went there for the first time to do a little bit of a spotlight on them in one of my previous videos, and I picked up some nice books, they were running a 40% off sale. And I had a chance to look at the books that they had in the cabinet, some of the higher grade things. And after Christmas, I'm sitting thinking, I might go back and take a look at some of those X-Men, those John Byrne X-Men again, to see if the defects were something I could really, really get out, or if they were just bad enough not to get. And I said, well, with that 40% off sale, that's definitely, let's take advantage of that. Let's go back up and take a look. And so last day of the year, I go driving back up there. It's in Parkville, Maryland. It's inside the Beltway in the Baltimore area, but it's right north of Baltimore technically. It's inside the Beltway, but north of the Baltimore city line. And I get up there and I go in, and it is packed. They had a lot of people in there, and it turns out, and I think one of the other reasons when I was going up there, I definitely made the right decision, was they weren't running a 40% off sale that final day of the year. They were running a 50% off sale on a lot of things, including all of these key comic books. And I'm going, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this. So I went in, and as I said, it was packed. And it was going to be a little bit before I could even get into the case. So I went back and started diving through some of their boxes again. And I knew I was going to look at those John Byrne X-Men that they had in the case. But I figured, okay, let's, just in case those aren't up to snuff, let's look at some of the other things. And sure enough, I started going through the bins, and I don't even remember some of these from the first time I went to the store, but I found some things. And well, let's just get into it. I'll show you what I picked up. Some of these I've had before, some of them I've never had before, but this right here was one I've never had before. It is a key comic in a sense that it kind of completes the Thanos storyline with Adam Warlock. This is where Thanos dies. He turns to stone. He isn't brought back until we get to the death of Captain Marvel. But this is a Jim Starlin book. You can recognize the way he draws the thing. It's very distinctive. And I've never had this book. And I had the pleasure of buying a comic book like this and sitting down and reading it. I really enjoyed this. And I think there's a couple of first appearances by some of these cosmic entities. I want to say Master Chaos. I can't remember. I should have wrote those down, but there's definitely a couple of key first appearances in there for some of the cosmic stories that Jim Starlin was very prone to do. It also shows you Soul World inside the Soul Gem, and honestly, I think this is where we're going to get the Black Widow returning someday. We're going to get Gamora returning someday because of the Soul Gem. You know that they didn't die. They're actually in the Soul Gem. I think, come on, the writers, they'll use that as a trope to get the characters back in. But yeah, I was really excited about this. And yes, I'm really, actually in really decent shape. It is a square-bound book, and I haven't pressed a lot of square-bound books. We'll see how this goes. If not, this will definitely just stay in a PC. It's valuable enough, even as a raw book, but graded, I'm sure it'll be pretty good. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that book. Next up was one that I never had as a kid. I had issue 2 and some of the ones after that, but I never had issue 1. And I picked one up at Baltimore Comic Con earlier this year, so this is technically my second copy of this. Shogun Warriors #1. And I kind of picked this up. I picked this up for the condition. Wasn't expensive. Even with the price half off, it wasn't expensive. But with some of these comics from this era based on toys kind of getting revisited and being popular again, like the Transformers, and then we've got Thundercats, and I'm going, okay. Personally, I was a big fan of the Shogun Warriors. I loved the artwork in these. It was a lot of fun. Sort of like Godzilla, but of course we're talking about the same artist, and I want to say it's Herb. Is it Trimp or Trimpy? I never knew how to say his name. But of course he was the Incredible Hulk artist. The artist that for dozens and dozens and dozens of issues, of course, including Hulk 181. And he was doing Godzilla, he was doing Shogun Warriors. But I actually enjoyed the artwork in these. It wasn't the most, I wouldn't say the most dynamic. It wasn't John Buscema, it wasn't Neil Adams. But it was very serviceable kind of artwork that didn't make you go and kind of like, oh, what is that? What kind of artwork is that? It was basic, but it was good. Sort of a Sal Buscema in that sort of world. They're really good artists. They're just not, well, in case of Sal, he's not his brother. They're not Neil Adams. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get into the discussion on who's better or worse, but I enjoyed the artwork. But I picked that up. I picked this up because it looked like it was in pretty good shape. I've got this, but it's in a much lower shape. It is my favorite, my second favorite copy issue of Tales of Suspense with Captain America and the Jack Kirby storylines. This is the first appearance of the Super Adaptoid. We saw the Adaptoid in the previous issue, but in this issue, you've got this wonderful splash page of the Avengers at the time. You've got Goliath and the Wasp, and I want to say, I don't know if the Scarlet Witch was there or not, but just beautiful artwork, and that splash page was great. They're visiting Avengers Mansion, and the Adaptoid in his more humanoid form was unconscious as a machine. How does he become unconscious? He's sitting there and he absorbs all the powers of the Avengers, and thus you get this. Oh, yes, Hawkeye was there too, because he obviously took, you can see the mask on him that looks like Hawkeye, and he's got the size of Goliath, and he's got the wings of the Scarlet Witch, and he's got the shield of Captain America. So maybe that was the ones that he absorbed. So this was just a great issue. I always loved this, and I've been looking to get a higher graded version of this at some point. So I'm excited to get this into the collection, and I hope to get this out to CGC pretty soon. All right, next up from Collector's Corner was a really nice copy of Batman. This is issue 429. This is part of that Death in the Family storyline. This is the Joker cover, Mike Mignola artwork right here. And I did a quick look up, and if you can pull 908 on something like this, it's fairly valuable. Actually, all of these are obviously at 9.8s, but this was one of the newer books, and I went ahead and picked this up. As I said, I wasn't sure if I was going to get any of those X-Men books or not, so I kind of want to have a stack of books to get no matter what, because I always feel like when you go to an LCS, and even though I didn't film in the store, again, I've been to the store a couple times now, and I haven't filmed in there because there's just so many people in such a tight area that I don't want to film other people in the videos. I don't want to get into that. I want to be able to stand back a little bit, and it's a small shop, and it's a lot of stuff in there. It's really great to look at, but in terms of shooting, I'd have to hit it when there isn't anybody there hardly, so I can show you the stuff without getting people in the videos. But I found this, and I figured, okay, let's keep this in my hand. If I get those X-Men, I may put it back. If not, I'm going to go ahead and get it. So obviously, you can tell at this point, I didn't get the X-Men because I ended up getting this. But this is a really nice copy right here, and there's no spine ticks over here. So I'm looking forward to getting this one into the press and hopefully getting a really high grade on this one right here. All right, so next up was a book that I've got in the PC. It's one of my favorite Silver Age books. It was one of the books that I found in my grandparents' house when I was a kid after my uncles had all left the house years since they had lived at my grandparents' house. And I lived right next to my grandparents. I lived there during the summers, so I had so much fun exploring the attic and going through stuff and treasure hunting, and going through and seeing what I could find. The old Hardy Boy and Nancy Drew books that they had, things like that. And there's a number of comic books that were left behind, and this was one of them. It was Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 15. Again, another Herb Trimpe artwork right here. This is probably one of my favorite issues he ever drew, and definitely one of my favorite covers he ever did. This is right here. I've talked about this issue before. I have picked this book up at least twice in the last year and a half from shows and I think online as well. And right now I'm sitting at CGC at least one of them in for grading. So I picked this up mostly because I love this book. Maybe I shouldn't keep buying this book. It's not a super big key, but it is the death of Nick Fury, and it is the first appearance of Bullseye, the original Bullseye. It's the first appearance and death of Bullseye. And yeah, that was a great character back then, even in the 60s. So, I don't know, but did Frank Miller see this character when well, I guess he didn't come up with, take that back, I'm all mistaken. Frank Miller did not create Bullseye, but so who did create Bullseye? It was issue 131 of Daredevil. Who was writing that then? Yeah, I don't know. Write in, let me know. I mean, I could look it up, but you guys, if you know, let me know in the comments. But this was the original Bullseye, and just wonderful artwork. And at the very end of the story, I'm going to give it away. Nick Fury gets killed. So does Bullseye, too. Yeah, just a great book. I love this cover. I used to trace over this cover with tracing paper, and then I would use the outline and I would create my own characters using this form right here. Just beautiful artwork, beautiful. Couldn't resist. It was in really nice shape. If it had been in worse shape, I would have resisted. But, so truth be told, I did get an X-Men. It wasn't one of the ones in a case. It was one of the ones they had really high up in the racks above the case. And I took a look at it, and this is the second one I've picked up as the last probably 2 months. X-Men 108 is the very first issue with John Byrne as the penciler, and this is in really, really nice shape. I mean, yeah, in the kind that makes me excited getting it into the shop and then getting it into CGC. God willing, CGC doesn't, pull one of their boners and, gives me a bad grader, but I think this will grade out pretty good, and I'm excited about that. Again, one of my projects is trying to get the 9.6 at the very least on all the John Byrne X-Men. This is the very first John Byrne X-Men. So, yeah, I'm excited about getting that. So I've got 2 copies in right now. Hopefully one of them will get that 9.6 at the very least. 9.8 would be great, but 9.6 is what I'm definitely hoping for at the very least on something like this. Brings us to the last book of the year, and what a way to finish the year out, and what a day to be able to go up to that shop, because I knew what was also in that case, besides some really nice John Byrne X-Men and some old Silver Age X-Men there as well. There's all kinds of other stuff in there. But they had some other things in there, and one of those things was the Hulk 181 that's really nice. I took a look at it, but they weren't doing trades. It was cash only, and I'm not liquid like that at the moment. But I was liquid enough for this right here. This is something I sold after I got it graded. It was one of my very first orders I had sent in the CGC. I had them work on it. They got it back to me as a 9.6, and I sold it. I sold it to help pay for other orders because I told myself I don't need this in my collection. It's not a favorite, but like all books that I sell, I end up regretting, and I come back to them at some point with the idea that I can get that grade again, and if I want to, I'll sell it again, and I'll come back and I'll buy the book again. But here it is. I finally got Spider-Man 300 back into PC. It's been over a year since I sold this, and with their 50% off sale, I ended up getting this back in the collection. It wasn't terribly cheap, but it was in that ballpark where if I get this graded, I'm going to be able to more than make my money out of it if I decide to sell it again. So back of it is got a few minor ticks on it. Of course, you got that black cover in the back. The front's fantastic. It's got a little bit of a tick that has looks more like a little bit of a stress than a true color-breaking spine tick. But this right here should grade out really well. I'm excited about this book. Going to be a little nervous getting it in there because it's going to be one of the most expensive books that I will have worked on in the shop. But I'm confident that we will work on it. We'll get it in a decent grade. We'll work on it and get a decent grade on it eventually. So this one will stay in the PC for a while. The other ones, some of them are PCs and some of them are definitely ones that I will hopefully turn around and sell and, again, help pay for this hobby a little bit. What a way to end 2022 on a pretty big grail. I already talked about the expectations for 2023, and it's the big three. It's the big three of the 70s. It's the Hulk 181, the Spider-Man 129, Giant Size X-Men #1. It's somewhere along the way, I will be picking those up, at least one of them, and we'll see where it goes. I think I'm going to try to pull back from just buying books all the time. It's very addictive. It really is. But the problem is I see value in books like this, especially books that I can work on in the shop and add value to them by cleaning and pressing them and then getting them to CGC. It's a very secular type of thing that I do around here. But I'm excited about it. I'm excited that you guys have stuck around with me for the last year and a half. And 2023, I want to take this channel up higher. I want to increase the production value of this. I'd actually like to get a decent camera for the show and maybe improve the quality of the editing. We'll see. We'll see where it goes with that. Other than that, I like the content that I give you guys. I hope you enjoy these books and these comic book hauls. I hope you like these CGC unboxings that I do. And I hope that you learn from my mistakes and from anything that I might actually do right occasionally. But definitely, I want you learning from my mistakes. If I've get a book and I've overgraded it and I get a grade that I don't like, that's the kind of thing that you can look at it and you can maybe see, did I do something wrong, or is that something that CGC maybe didn't grade right? These are things that you can pick up from the kind of videos that I do. So thank you guys. Let's have a great 2023, and I will see you guys for the next show. Take care.